Hello, everyone. We have some breaking news from the SWFT blockchain. We kindly ask you to consider smashing that like. We understand we have to earn that. Before we get into all of the nitty gritty with the news, it's the DCENT Wallet. As the saying goes, not your keys, not your crypto. Get yourself a significant discount. This helps benefit both channels. We'll play that and we'll come right back. If managing your crypto feels like solving a puzzle, it's time to switch to DCENT Wallet. It's just a few taps. You can manage, track, and secure your crypto with unmatched ease. And here's the best part. Grab your DCENT Wallet at a discounted price by using the referral link below. Don't miss out on making your crypto experience smoother and more secure. All right, welcome back. So with that said, let's jump into this brief announcement. And like I mentioned, everybody, it did come straight from SWFT blockchain. Now, why are they posting some of these key things? Well, let's get into it. So for one, what you see right here is literally posted just a few hours ago, 7:29 p.m. Rue and I started our outline originally at that time. So this is just, again, really recent, about an hour ago. But it says, breaking: Trump signs order to establish a Bitcoin and digital assets reserve, a quote-unquote Fort Knox for crypto. It says download Swift GPT for more updates, news, and insights. And when they get into it, again, even straight from their app in the screenshot, you see about this executive order and how it moves to aim to create that stockpile of digital assets, potentially impacting the financial markets and the future of digital currency regulation. Key word to remember moving forward in the outline is definitely stockpile. All right, so this is basically SWFT blockchain posting this. Again, why is this important? Well, in the same day, straight from SWFT blockchain, you see, long before the breaking news, with Bridgers, you can seamlessly swap BTC across chains without relying on centralized exchanges. Okay, think about this, everybody. This means that SWFT blockchain recognizes supply and how it meets demand. Think about it. Don't overthink about it. Why would they highlight BTC? Well, for one, like Rue and I pointed out a while back, it's the whole idea of China, for example, mainland China, being unbanned when it comes to access to BTC or even altcoins. Well, we saw Swift Coin blast off. A lot of people were asking in the community, why is it doing that? Again, when we got more into it, it's like, this makes sense. Tad bit more about this before I kick it on over to Rue that I want to share with you is basically also this. What do we have? Well, they mentioned, for example, some of these other things that leads us over to this big announcement from Donald Trump. So what we're going to do is we're going to play this real quick. And if anything, listen to this. Understand supply and demand forces, especially when President Trump signed executive orders officially creating, quote unquote, a Bitcoin strategic reserve. This is 1 minute, and then we'll come right back. Here we go.
Today we're signing, and this is very historic, an executive order establishing a strategic Bitcoin reserve and digital asset stockpile. This is a promise that you made throughout the campaign, and today we're keeping that promise. The reserve will be capitalized with Bitcoin that the federal government already owns, so it won't cost taxpayers a dime. This is like a digital Fort Knox for digital gold. And premature sales of Bitcoin over the past years cost American taxpayers over $17 billion in lost value, because we didn't have a long-term strategy.
Right.
Now we do. So.
And this is something you believe in fully?
100%, yeah.
Okay.
And the whole community believes in it.
Very good. And they made the promise, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Mr. Rue Black, the way I look at it is, this is all in alignment. I know you have some things that you wanted to share, so I thought I'd kick it on over to you, sir.
Trump did exactly what he said he was going to do. I thought also really good to point out there, he said Bitcoin strategic reserve and other digital assets. So keep that in mind. And I think they said a couple days ago that in a crypto strategic reserve, XRP would be one of those. We covered that last time we got you guys on a collaboration. So Trump's doing what he said he'd do. So very like kudos to him. But another thing I'd like to share with you guys is one of the things that they really pointed out was digital gold. They kept on saying digital gold. I know a lot of times people talk about Bitcoin being digital gold, but I like to point out something with you guys from a post that I have from Kraken. And I also like to point out some things with numbers. April 26, 2021, Kraken has changed to using BTC for most purposes. XBT is still used for the API, futures API, and logs and downloads. Okay, being that Bitcoin is decentralized, there is no standard nor governing body to dictate what notation should be used for it. Nonetheless, BTC has been generally accepted abbreviation for Bitcoin, stemming from the early days of Bitcoin. The abbreviation XBT comes from the International Standards Organization that maintains a list of internationally recognized cryptocurrencies. The standard dictates that if a cryptocurrency is not associated with a particular country, that it should begin with an X. Hence, XBT. Another example of this is the abbreviation for gold, XAU. Okay, below is a list of XX currently on Kraken that retain the X and Z prefixes. Also note this list is subject to change. Okay, just on the side, some of the ones that they list are Doge, XRP, Monero, Stellar, XLM, and Litecoin, ETH Classic, and ETH. So I thought that was very interesting. But sticking on to gold for a second here. Let me bring up two sites here. This is Gematria. Like, you know, I'm a coder. And to me, Gematria is no different than coding. How a compiler takes words that I put into like a software program, like a language like C++, and it compiles those words down to numbers, which are binary code. To me, this is no different. So we take XBT, right? And we have 4 different ciphers. No worries about the ciphers, but just pay attention to the numbers. We're just going to match a pattern, just like you would match a pattern with, you know, a crypto chart. So we got XBT, and then we got XAU. The number for the what they told us was the abbreviation for gold. There's also something called XDR. XDR, I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it's special drawing rights. This is the currency that the IMF uses within central banks. So if we go down here and we look at these, they all have the same numbers in these ciphers. The interesting one here, XDU, 1 + 9 is 10 anyway. So say you can say that's the same. So I think that's very interesting. Bitcoin, as far as I'm concerned, has always been kind of related to gold and this XBT because they could have chosen any letters, right? They just happen to choose the letters that arrange and match with gold. So I think that's very interesting. Okay, special drawing rights are, and this is the symbol XDR, like I told you guys, and this is the ISO symbol for it. Special drawing rights are supplementary foreign exchange reserve assets defined and maintained by the International Monetary Fund. SDRs or XDRs are units of account for the IMF and is not a currency per se. They represent a claim to currency held by the IMF member countries for which they are exchanged. So it's interesting that these have the same cipher numbers, the same pattern for me. Just wanted to note that.
All right, something else I want you guys to note is this. So you're going to see Christine Lagarde come up on your screen. So again, picture what Rue just mentioned. So even on a basic search, check this out. This is something else I think as well. when we pull up a basic search about Christine Lagarde, what you're going to see here is this. You see, for example, if we just get it come up on the screen, you see here this. This lady, as we know, is the president of the European Central Bank. And on top of that, what is also mentioned, on July 5th, 2011, Christine Lagarde became the 11th managing director of who? Boom. Boil it, mash it, stick it in the stew. The International Monetary Fund, the IMF. Now, I'm telling you guys, I know it sounds kind of spooky in a way, but there's a reason why we look into some of these key things, okay? And we're going to share a little bit more about why she is such a pivotal figure, especially when it comes to the bigger picture of all of this moving forward. All right, so how so? Again, why point out any of it? Well, again, when we get more into the nitty-gritty about this, shout out to Linda P. Jones, as we also point out, and other people. David Sachs posted that Trump just signed, of course, that executive order. Now, we already shared that particular video. Here is the highlight in regards to some of this. It says the government will not acquire what? Additional assets for the stockpile. Remember I mentioned that key word of stockpile, beyond those obtained through forfeiture proceedings. The purpose of the stockpile is responsible stewardship of the government's digital assets under the Treasury Department. Now, with that said, before we wrap things up and kick it over to Rue for some other commentary and some other things he has, I want to share this with you. Shout out to this guy, Subjective Views. Points out specifically this, that ECB president, as in the European Central Bank President Christine Lagarde, says Bitcoin will not enter the reserves of any of the central banks of the General Council. Now, guys, gals, everybody, listen up for a second. We know that this was originally announced roughly January 30th. We also know that for the course of the last few weeks, month, give or take, that we saw the entire market really tank all the way down to, I believe, 2.60 trillion for the overall crypto market. There was a particular exchange, as we know about, that was hacked. All those, of course, big factors and so on. Guess what? At the same time, this was a big factor. We're going to play this, draw your own conclusion in regards to this, and of course, we'll kick it on over to Rue. But I think, if anything, you need to see this for yourself and why it's a big deal. This is a minute and 21 seconds. We'll come right back. Here we go.
On a completely different topic, your Czech counterpart yesterday said that his institution will assess including Bitcoin into foreign currency reserves. And US President Trump has backed the idea of a national strategic Bitcoin reserve. What do you think about such ideas? Is that something the ECB is looking into? Thanks.
On this matter that you referred to, and whether reserves of central bank should or could include Bitcoins, I think there is a view around the table of the Governing Council, and most likely the General Council as well, that reserves have to be liquid, that reserves have to be secure, that they have to be safe, that they should not be plagued by the suspicion of money laundering or other criminal activities. And as a result, I'm confident that reserves will not enter, that Bitcoins will not enter the reserves of any of the central banks of the General Council. I had a good conversation with my colleague from the Czech Republic, and I leave it to him to make whatever announcement he wants to make, but I'm confident that he's convinced, as we all are, of the necessity to have liquid, secure, and safe reserves.
So with that said, Rue, the way I look at it is like this. We have presented everybody this timeline of what has happened literally roughly a little over a month ago, and what's happened in light of everything recently today with the executive orders from Trump. You've seen the announcements from SWFT Blockchain. We can put two and two together and realize this. In the past of the last bull market, things like PancakeSwap and Uniswap really stood out. But moving forward, when it comes to SWFT Blockchain, for me, I think they realize that they can literally lead the charge as far as being an institutional swap. Okay, you have that institutional swap of mainland China. That is a huge bunch of people, to say the least, right? When we look at the overall pie chart, they represent at least, I would imagine, maybe over 1/4 of that slice of the pie. So again, BTC swap as mentioned literally today, and all these other announcements. I got to kick it on over to you. I got to get some of your thoughts about this because I think this is a real big deal moving forward.
It's interesting thinking about it. Maybe it's setting up for China and the US to have like, just thinking about it, just first to my mind, maybe it's setting up for China and the US to have a quote unquote Bitcoin stockpile war. This just came to me. So what if, China now says, well, we're going to grab Bitcoin now. You guys are choosing not to grab anymore, but we're going to grab more. What if I already know that the IMF said to El Salvador not to grab any more than what they're doing, but maybe they grab more. And maybe this becomes an arms race for Bitcoin. That would be pretty interesting.
It would be. It would be. And, I think we're all paying attention, obviously, to what other countries are doing and so on. So we have a little bit more in regards to what Rue has for this outline. And then after that, we'll wrap things up. But I want you guys to pay attention to what he has because I think that this is another key thing that is definitely worth pointing out. Go ahead and take it away, Rue.
It says right here, the exact moment Texas passed the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve legislation, SB 21, which is very interesting because 21 million Bitcoins. It's kind of interesting that this is SB 21 in the Senate. And Texas is the 8th biggest economy in the world. This would be tantamount to Italy, France, or India establishing a Bitcoin reserve. I didn't know that Texas was that big that they have as much in their economy as these 3 countries singularly. But I think that's very, very huge. So it's very interesting that like a mere 6 or 7 hours after this, Trump does what he does and establishes it for the US in total itself. Very interesting, very big news for Bitcoin.
That's a wrap. And on behalf of myself and Rue, we just kindly ask you to consider subscribing to the channel if you found value with the content. And of course, hopefully we earned your like. Hey guys, if you listen to the entire outline, simply do us a solid and type in this key figure into the comments. And that is Christine Lagarde. And we'll know that you listened to the entire outline. On behalf of myself and our brother Rue, know what you have, know why you hold it. The research trumps FUD 110%. We'll see you on the next one.